Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my thoughts on Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, some more science fiction for you today. Science fiction horror with Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes from 2022. This is the second of January's reads for my big old reading project, Science Fiction for the Somewhat Less Hesitant. Before I get into the synopsis and my thoughts and all that kind of stuff, my usual spoiler warning, I won't be discussing any plot twists or anything like that. This is a science fiction, horror, mystery, thriller type thing. So it would be relatively easy to spoil it. So I will steer clear of anything like that. Any specifics of things that I discuss you'll find within the blurb or the first chapter or so. But if you do want to go in completely blind to this, then do feel free to click away from this video now and come back when you've read it. So with that warning out of the way, a little synopsis then of Dead Silence. So in this we meet Claire Kovalik, who is the lead officer, or the team leader, of a small repair crew working right at the edges of space, who are preparing to head home after their final mission. They are all about to essentially lose their jobs to automated technology. But before the crew can kind of pack up and head back to Earth, they intercept a mysterious distress signal and decide to investigate, leading them out into even deeper space. There they discover the Aurora, which is a luxury space liner, think Titanic in space, that disappeared years prior under very mysterious circumstances. I think it's like 20 years prior to the events of the book. And the ship was once the height of opulence, catered to the richest of the rich. But now it's just a haunting, decaying shell floating aimlessly in the dark void of space. So the crew decide to explore this abandoned ship, the Aurora, looking for some loot essentially to kind of prove their claim as finders of the ship, so they can essentially all become rich from finding it. And as they explore, strange and terrifying things begin to happen. Claire struggles to unravel the mystery of the Aurora's demise whilst kind of battling her own psychological demons, of which she has quite a few. And her crew is plagued by paranoia and hallucinations. The unexplained events on board escalate as the sinister history of the ship begins to surface. And Claire and the crew find themselves trapped in a deadly nightmare. So there you go, there's a general synopsis for you. So my thoughts on this then. Yeah, this was pretty good fun. It is a haunted house story, but on a luxury ship, cruiser in space, basically. It does have a really good, fun, creepy, tense atmosphere to it. The mystery, I think, worked well in the most part. There is a little bit of time jumping in the first half of the book, which kind of works to ask questions and kind of increase that mystery. It is one of those books where you do find out that everything has kind of gone to shit, essentially, right at the beginning. We are told some of what has apparently happened, what transpired on the Aurora with Claire and her crew, through kind of Claire being interviewed after the fact. But she's suffering from memory loss. And so there are a lot of gaps in her knowledge and therefore our knowledge, and conjecture, essentially. There is quite a clear sort of 3-act structure to the plot. It's not kind of telegraphed in terms of it being in parts, but it is quite evident. So you've got kind of Claire and the crew in space. To start with, they find the Aurora and decide to board it. Then you've got all the kind of the escalating horror whilst they're on board. And then you've got part three, which I won't go into as you would be getting into spoiler territory with that. Act one did a really good job, I think, of situating me in the world. We got to meet Claire, got quite a bit of her background, her issues, and also meet the four members of her crew. And we also get a good handle on kind of the general sort of situation in the world with regards to the state of things on Earth. It's very basic stuff, but it does help sort of help you understand where Claire's coming from, things like that. And also we get to kind of meet the corporations who essentially dominate things in space and their rivalries with one another. The characters of the crew, it is a small ensemble cast essentially. They were fine. They were okay. They were decent. But I wouldn't say there was any kind of huge. There wasn't a huge depth to them or anything like that. They were quite archetypal, but that worked. It worked absolutely fine. I didn't love any of them. I didn't become attached particularly to any of them, but I did like the ones that I assume I was meant to root for. There were ones that I did kind of get on board with somewhat. There were, however, a couple of kind of really irritating and horrid characters in there. And I think they were written more successfully for me in terms of getting me to have a bit more of a pronounced kind of emotional reaction to them, because I really, really disliked them. But you were meant to, and so that's all good. But yeah, part one was a good setup for the main bulk of the story. It was easy to get into, I think, thanks to Barnes's writing style. It was quite straightforward. It's definitely not poetic prose, but that is not a criticism. She's pretty direct and has an economy of style, I think, that makes the plot zip along really easily. But like her descriptions of environment and events, things like that, definitely creates tension and can be pretty creepy. So that worked really well. Act two is definitely the part I enjoyed the most. All the kind of the horror, the jump scares, if you like, for the characters more than for us as the reader. But it did translate somewhat. As I say, it was tense and creepy. I think the escalation worked well in terms of the horror, and it kept me really well invested in the story. The ship itself is really well imagined. I could visualize it really clearly, and it's very eerie. And I did wonder kind of what the crew were going to find around each corner and kind of behind each door of the kind of the cabins as they're exploring this abandoned ship. I think the sciencey elements of the science fiction, if you like, were handled well too. Things like gravity and environmental systems, that kind of stuff. It's basic. This is not hard science fiction at all. It's basic level stuff, but it did work in reinforcing the sense of place and environment that the characters were dealing with. So I did think that there was a good balance there in terms of how much sciencey stuff came in. Act three, though, is unfortunately where it did disappoint me a little. I can't say a huge amount about why without spoiling things, though, so I will keep it brief. There is a shift in the story that I didn't necessarily take to particularly. I think the twist of it, the mystery of it, what caused the downfall of the ship and continues to cause the paranoia and hallucinations that Claire and her crew have experienced. I think, the solution to that was a little bit of a letdown for me personally. And this is just, I think, a very personal reaction. It just reduced the impact of the final act for me in terms of the horror. It kind of stopped it from being as enjoyably creepy. But it didn't spoil the book for me, not at all. I just think it lost its oomph in the final stages for me, and I would have loved to have seen that act be as strong and engaging as the second in its atmosphere and its tension. It still finishes solidly, and as I say, I still had a lot of fun with it, But I think if there's one criticism for me, it's probably just that final act just didn't have quite the punch I wanted it to. Okay, so to sum up then, I think the strengths of this book is in its atmosphere and its kind of its concept, really. Haunted house, but haunted ship in space, basically. That kind of concept, that kind of, you know, small crew exploring this abandoned space with gross stuff in it and creepy stuff in it. Yeah, it works really well. I really enjoyed that element of it. And as I say, there was definite tension there and creep factor. Weakness wise, I think, as I've just said, the final act didn't quite do it for me as much as I hoped it would. But your mileage may vary on that. That is, as I say, that's a personal reaction to the twist, to the solution, if you like. So you may find that it works for you. For me, it just wasn't really what I was hoping for. But I definitely liked this. You know, I'm going to put this on Storygraph at a 3.5 stars. I would recommend this if you fancy a really good, quick, fun, spooky mystery set in space. Bit of mystery space horror. I think if you like something like From Below by Darcy Coates, that's the one that immediately when I was reading this, I was like, oh, this feels a bit similar to From Below. That's a haunted house type, you know, mystery, but on a ship at the bottom of the ocean with a dive crew going down. And there are definite kind of similarities in terms of the level of tension and creepiness and that kind of thing. So if you liked, From Below, then I would say you probably, you know, get some enjoyment certainly out of Dead Silence. So yeah, it's kind of a popcorn book. Do you know what I mean? It's like equivalent to a popcorn movie. It's fast and you just, you know, it's fun, fast-paced stuff. It's not trying to be a big thinky book. It's just trying to entertain you for the amount of time it's asked for your attention. And I definitely think that it does that. Even with my personal criticisms of elements of it, it definitely kept me engaged and it definitely entertained me. It was a very quick read, even like there's about 330 pages, I think. But I whipped through it in like 3 nights, I think. And yeah, it flew by. Yeah, it was great. Will I read any more S.A. Barnes? Yeah, I will. As I say, it's a good, fun read, and sometimes I'm in the mood for just this sort of thing. So I definitely will try some more S.A. Barnes. She's got one out. Ghost Station is already out. That sounds like fun. And then she's got a new book coming out in April called Cold Eternity, which I do really like the sound of the blurb for. So I will definitely dip back into more of her stuff. Yeah, I mean this one was a welcome change of pace from some of the more challenging, ideas-driven, you know, mind-melty science fiction that I've been reading for this project. This was just a cracking bit of fast-paced space horror, and it was very, very welcome. So there we go. That's my wrap up for Dead Silence. So next up for this project then is a bit more post-apocalyptic science fiction from George Stewart in the form of Earth Abides. I will probably start that this weekend. And then a bit more space horror with Unto Leviathan, also known as Ship of Fools, by Richard Paul Russo, which I will no doubt get to, I think, mid next week. But that will do from me today. So thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you read Dead Silence? And if so, what did you think? I will be back on Sunday with another video, so I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.